Hello and thank you for joining me on the history of Bangalore. I am Ramjee Chandran and today we are on episode 98 of season 2. We spent the last several episodes watching as two forces prepare for that inevitable collision. Mysore building its arsenal and its navy, the British, their battle plans and their alliances. Now the collision is here. And it begins as so many things in the history of this city begin with Bangalore. But before I get there, as always, a word of thanks to my sponsors, the Prestige Group, who make this podcast possible. Building cities one landmark at a time, they transform dreams into reality. You can be a part of the future. Simply add prestige to your life. In November 1766, the British had signed the Treaty of Hyderabad with the Nizam of Hyderabad, Asaf Jah II. On the surface, it was an arrangement about revenues, the cession of the northern Sarkars in return for an annual tribute of 9 lakh. But buried inside that treaty was something more significant for Bengaluru, a military provision. The company would supply troops to assist the Nizam, and the target of those troops was explicitly understood by everyone involved: Hyder Ali. During the time, the correspondence from Madras at the Madras Presidency of the British, specifically one dated November 1766, referred without any ambiguity to, and I quote, "operations in concert against the common disturber of Carnatic peace." That common disturber was Hyder Ali, and the fort that they intended to take was Bangalore. And that plan which came together was the new Triple Alliance: the British, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and the Marathas. The British would provide discipline and artillery and command, the Nizam would provide cavalry and legitimacy for the claim, and the Marathas, under Murari Rao, would provide additional mobile force. Together, the three would attack Mysore from multiple directions, overwhelm Hyder Ali before he could concentrate his strength, and then control the plateau. Now that was a sound plan on paper. Hyder Ali read the situation with characteristic speed. He understood that the Marathas were the weakest link in the coalition, not militarily, but politically. Their commitment to the British was, let's call it, transactional. They had joined because it appeared advantageous at the time. They would leave the moment it ceased to be, or could be persuaded to. The forces marched on Bangalore. The first to reach Bangalore were the Marathas. And then Hyder Ali acted. He dispatched a skilled diplomat, Appaji Ram, to the Peshwa camp. The negotiations were swift. Hyder offered 35 lakh rupees, half in cash immediately, and the Kolar district pledged his security for the balance to be paid over a period of time. The Peshwa accepted the terms, and then the Marathas turned round and marched back to Pune with their payment, abandoning the coalition without ceremony or apology. Just like that, the British had lost one leg of their alliance before the campaign even had begun properly. Next, Hyder Ali turned to the Nizam, and what followed was one of the most audacious pieces of diplomatic theatre in 18th century India. When representatives of the Nizam visited Hyder Ali's camp, they were received in a manner calculated to make the impression that no amount of argument could match. Hyder prepared a throne for the Nizam. It was not that usual ceremonial throne made of wood and covered in velvet, but literally a pile of cash, a throne made of 1 lakh rupees in coin, and the Nizam was invited to sit upon it. He was then presented with a sofa. Now, this was not a matter of interior decor. The sofa was covered end to end in sacks of gold pagodas, which is hanas or varahas, and silver rupees. Neither was this great hospitality, but it was a demonstration of what Mysore possessed, how rich it was, and what it was willing to share with the right ally. Alongside the display of wealth came a political proposition of considerable subtlety. Hyder Ali proposed that his son, Tipu, would marry the daughter of Mahfuz Khan, the man that the Nizam of Hyderabad recognized as the legitimate heir to the throne of the Carnatic, as opposed to the present ruler, Muhammad Ali Walaja, the British puppet. The logic was quite elegant. If Tipu married into the Mahfuz Khan line, then Mysore would acquire a legal claim to the Carnatic. The Nizam's own allies would become the rightful rulers of the territory, and the British were currently holding it through a very pliant, independent, and dependable Nawab. The Nizam, in all honesty, was already resentful of the British. They had treated his ownership of the northern Sarkars with what he considered to be contemptuous disregard. Going over his head, they went and obtained a firman from the Mughal emperor, whose authority over the territory Nizam had actually contested. And they presented this firman as sufficient legal basis to collect revenues from the Nizam's own land. The British had also made it abundantly clear in their dealings with him that the Nizam was a means to an end and not really a partner. So Hyder's offer landed on ground that had been well prepared by British condescension. The result? The Nizam switched sides. And now the second leg of the Triple Alliance was gone. Colonel Joseph Smith arrived at the gates of Bangalore in January 1767, only to find that the coalition that he had been sent to lead no longer existed. The Marathas had taken their money and left. The Nizam was now riding along with Hyder Ali. So Smith was left with his own forces and no allies. And that attack on Bangalore, their objective that had been written into the Treaty of Hyderabad, was abandoned before it began. Now this was actually the fourth Battle of Bangalore. There was no fighting. Hyder Ali had won it without firing a shot. And now let's take a commercial break, and when I'm back, let's look at what happened with the rest of this story. Right after this.
Maximum connectivity, maximum luxury, maximum lifestyle. Live your max at Prestige Raintree Park. Opulent residences nestled in 21 acres of breathtaking landscape with 1 lakh plus square feet of clubhouse, 3 swimming pools, and ample leisure and sports amenities. Experience exquisite living at Prestige Raintree Park in prime Whitefield with schools, offices, hospitals, and shopping malls just a hop away. Call 81399 or visit prestigeconstructions.com to know more. Radar approved.
Colonel Smith withdrew from the Bangalore approaches and repositioned his forces in the Bara Mahal. Now this was a fortified highland zone, which is a strategic buffer between the Mysore plateau and the Carnatic plains. It was from here that he expected that Hyder would make his next move. He was right. He didn't have to wait long. In August 1767, Hyder Ali and the Nizam of Hyderabad assembled their combined forces at Bangalore. The rendezvous point was the city, the Pete, the fort, the staging ground for the invasion of the Carnatic. Accounts that were written at the time placed the combined force at about 40,000 cavalry, 28,000 infantry, and more than 100,000 guns. And then the forces left. From Bangalore, they descended from the plateau into the lowlands, moving towards the Carnatic with a speed and confidence that reflected the strength of what Hyder Ali had assembled. Colonel Smith, from the British side, moved to intercept, and the two forces met at Chengam on the 2nd of September 1767. That battle, the Battle of Chengam, was the first formal engagement of the First Anglo-Mysore War, and it was in miniature a demonstration of everything that would define the conflict for the next 2 years. Smith's forces numbered fewer than 7,000, and that 7,000 mainly consisted of Indian sepoys with a small European contingent and limited cavalry. Hyder's coalition outnumbered them by a factor of 10. In any conventional engagement, the outcome would not have been in doubt, but Smith did not fight a conventional engagement. As Hyder Ali's cavalry made sallies to harass the British lines. Now, sallies are the standard opening move designed to disrupt formalities and provoke some kind of a panicked response so that both sides could sort of assess each other. Smith ordered his men instead into a moving square. This was called the hedgehog, a hollow formation of infantry facing outwards on all 4 sides. The front rank kneeling, bayonets planted and angled upwards, and the ranks right behind them standing and firing disciplined volleys. No flanks, no rear, no soft point for a cavalry to exploit. Horses will not charge into a wall of steel. This is not a matter of training, it's animal instinct. And Hyder's cavalry, for all its quality, could not break what it could not enter, or rather, would not enter. The artillery duel that followed exposed a completely different problem. The Nizam's cannon were ancient and cumbersome. His gunners, who were described with very little charity, were neither skilled nor motivated. The Mysore artillery was trained by French officers and they were better organized. But Smith occupied a hill that neither side had initially controlled, and he did this quite by surprise. And from that elevated position, Smith's guns found their range, not Hyder's. His fire had passed too high. During the fighting, Hyder lost a senior commander, Ghalib Muhammad Khan. Several of his heavy cannon were abandoned. The momentum of the Mysore advance had been stalled. But although Smith had the advantage, he could not press the advantage because his supply position was desperate. His closest depot was at Tiruvannamalai and his stocks were already critically low. So Smith called a retreat for his troops, withdrew from the field and marched through the night, 27 hours of continuous movement without refreshment, covering the distance at barely 2 kilometers an hour, which is standard for moving armies. And so the Battle of Chengam ended without a victor. Smith had held his ground against overwhelming numbers. Hyder Ali had failed to break the British formation. Neither had been destroyed, neither had retreated. But what the Battle of Chengam established was something much more important than any kind of a tactical result. It told both sides what the other was capable of. Hyder now knew that British discipline and artillery made a frontal engagement costly. Smith now knew that Hyder's cavalry could operate at a scale and speed that made conventional supply and movement extremely dangerous. The First Anglo-Mysore War had found its character. It was not going to be decided by one single pitched battle. It would be decided only by endurance, by logistics, and by the ability to keep an army in the field when everything around it was being stripped away. That education was about to continue at Tiruvannamalai first and then at the gates of Bangalore itself. But for all intents and purposes, the First Anglo-Mysore War had begun and there needed to be one victor. This was part 1 of the First Anglo-Mysore War, and coming up in the next episode, the first introduction to a young man who one day would become the Sultan of Mysore, Hyder Ali's son, Tipu Sultan. And that is coming up very soon. I am Ramjee Chandran, and this is the history of Bangalore.